In this video, I'll take you through the look dev process of this asteroid scene made in Blender. Of course, it's inspired by the classic scene in Empire, you know, a scene that just keeps on giving. And I used the big, medium, small model shop Greebles pack as well as the Astronova pack, as well as Lens Sim. And I know you've been taught that you should be precise and plan things out and sketch and all this. But I don't think you have to. Welcome to Technical. My name is Rasmus. I'm an art director and a concept designer with 20 years of professional games development experience, and I'm on a mission to inspire and empower designers, makers, and creators design the future. So here we're in Blender, and the first thing I know I need is some headlights on this particular ship. The ship is made a while ago, and it's part of the pack as I mentioned in the intro. But the headlights were never part of the ship as such. So every time I want to do something like that, I model some quick headlights for it. Obviously, I could add them and save it, but for some stupid reason, I never do. So I steal a component from the side of the ship, one of these greebles. You can see how roughly that's textured. And I add these self-illuminant materials in the socket of this lamp here. And here we are, testing out the camera and everything. As I mentioned as well, I'm using Lens Sim, which means that you'll see that in a second. So I'm just playing with viewports and backgrounds here, setting up the scene. I'm going into the world and adding finding a star field, setting up an environment texture here. I have a star map that I made from custom star images, I think from NASA, and they're color graded in a certain way that makes them look the way I like. You can see I'm playing with the lighting as well. It's just a sunlight, and just sort of a rough setup here, as you can see in my little viewport there. Let's save. Just make sure that the camera is focused on the right spot. Just coming into the headlights here again and just making sure they have a blue hue to them and quite a lot of strength, 400 in strength there. And I'm just rendering to check how it looks with the custom compositing node. I have a glow node there and a little setup because I'm having some challenges with glows and denoising and stuff. That's always something, you know, especially with add-ons and everything, but that looks good. Come back into the background texture and then the ever-present RGB nodes just to crush the contrast a little bit more. You can see there's a little bit of a spotty, blotchy glow around the stars, which looks a little bit too low res or too JPEG-y maybe. Crush that a little bit, and then I'm heading into the Astronova pack to find some space rock. And the funny thing is, I think you saw in the intro that they come in brown as well, which I didn't even cross my mind here. So I'm just adding in these gray versions, the moon rocks, moonstones, and I'm just stacking them roughly here so I can see the shader. And instead of going into the pack and getting the brownstones proper, I decided to do that myself. Start by adding an RGB curves and playing a bit with the contrast. And then I add a mixed color. Because I'm a Photoshop thinker, which means mixed color sort of works like my brain has been customary to in terms of using Photoshop over the years. That's relatively easy to think of it as blend modes and blend layers. So I add this brown tone here. Try and copy it over. Can't for some reason. God knows why. But eventually I make it work. Just give it a little bit of differentiation. I mean, I can get hours to go by just playing with the textures and shaders and noodling with it. some asteroids. And just doing a quick test render to see how they read. Got some nice bounce from the ship on them. That's because I use quite a powerful sun usually. Yeah. Pretty happy with that. Coming back in and choosing a different star map with a different star scale. So if you want to make your own science fiction scenes and you want to skip ahead a little bit, maybe you're a beginner and you're unsure where to start, or maybe you're a seasoned pro and you want to speed up your workflow, the Big Medium Small Model Ship Greebles Asset Pack is a great start. It's a pack I made in collaboration with the team, and the intent of that is really to make a pack that feels like Lego, but for spaceship nerds, right? And that pack contains 600 plus items, lots of characters, and lots of little tiny bits so you can remix and build your own stuff. It also has a bunch of poses for these characters, and it has a bunch of hero ships as well that are pre-made for you, so that you can get started quickly. So again, as mentioned, whether you're curious or whether you're a pro that want to speed things up, check it out, link in the description. So now I'm starting the rough layout of the scene, and I'm making my camera a little wider, a little bit more cinematic, 1 to 235, classic 35mm widescreen format. And here I'm testing out a little bit, see if I can get some interesting notes out of adding a color ramp to the roughness map. Sometimes you can find some cool speculas. Of course, you know, the stone might end up looking too metallic, and so I ditch it rather quickly. Just testing how bright these rocks should be. Maybe there's something to be said about adding a little bit more brighter albedo. And I decided against it because I think that the Big Medium Small team would have set up everything to look as it should. So here's the thing where you're gonna murder me. Instead of setting up some sort of field with, I don't know, auto scramble something, I just do it manually. And I guess instead of going on YouTube and learning how to do it, I just decide to just go right ahead and make that manually. So I sorely apologize. That's just stupid. What I will say though is that rather than letting the fact that I can't quite figure out the mechanics of it hold me back, I decide to use the method I can, rather than, you know, procrastinating from learning something new. I remember seeing Blender Guru doing a video saying don't learn geometry nodes. It's kind of the same thing. Not that I've seen the video, but the point being there, like, don't let the perfect solution to a complicated problem hinder you getting started. And again, that's not really to say that you shouldn't if you find it easy, but I find it on the verge of being too challenging, so I dive in. And so, you know, I always talk about knowing oneself, and I know that I'm good at just rock and rolling it, but I also know I need help. So if I was doing this in a professional setting, I would certainly get help, or surround myself with people that know how to do this work, which means that we can help each other. And what happens often is that I can provide some of the out-of-the-box batshit crazy, and they can provide some of the sure, cool idea, my man, but if you want to do it, here's how to do it. And then you know, we can help each other with where we are strongest. But actually, I find this kind of zen. I'm just sitting here sorting out rice in a bowl, right? It's kind of ridiculous. But part of this, of course, is having a comfortable time. And part of it actually is not about being effective per se. It's about being in flow. So rather than watching a video and learning something complicated, which there are many good reasons for, I do this almost as a form of meditation, moving around asteroids. I mean, ridiculous. And I'm sure you'll get angry at me before I'm done with this, because I'm just noodling on this like a lot. You can see I'm doing layering because I figured I don't really need it to be actually precise and correct. And so it's almost like, it's not really forced perspective as such, but it's sort of like a minimized type of layering, which means that it'll be a little bit less distracting to work with from a visual and a logical point of view. Another thing I should have done here is to lump all the asteroids into a group or something. But no, I like it difficult because I'm an idiot. But you can see over here in my little preview that I'm beginning to get sort of a scene that works. I know I want the belt or the asteroid field to stretch out into the background, and I know I want, of course, big chunky boys up front and having that disappear out into the horizon, and then have the ship engage in maneuvers around these stones in a way that is dynamic. So right now everything is quite boring and flat. The ship, I know I'll come back to that later, so what I'm focusing on is really making sure that we get some asteroids in a composition that looks interesting. And I'm just testing out where's the shadow of the ship, where's what scale looks good for the stones, asteroids, just to get a sense of the material I have to work with. One of the things I really like is the bounce from the ship onto the asteroid there, you can see. Of course, it's quite harsh because it's space lighting, so there's no fog or anything like that. Of course, you can add that since it's a Star Wars inspired scene, meaning you can certainly push the logic and the credibility a little bit to make it a bit more fantastical if you want. But there's something about, I like that it feels harsh as it would be, and then I'll add a little glamour in terms of color and lighting a little later. Experimenting a bit with some of these color modes because I feel like I need a little bit of brightness in the shadows up top. Maybe a little bit too brutally contrasty. Oh yeah, there you go. You see the warmth in the bounce inside that little crater on the asteroid. It feels adventurous and warm, and I really like that. It's again the super hardcore space scenario with a little bit of fairy tale dust on top, and the warm bounce from the sun hitting the inside of the crater, bouncing over to the shadow side of the crater is really cool. But unless I decide that I need a little bit of artificial bounce, and I just add another sun or copy the sun really, and add a blue light on it, really low intensity, so I get a little bit more ambience in the scene. Again, if you've watched the space lighting tutorial I did a while back, you know, pretty much like that. Super overpowered sun and a very subtle bounce usually works quite well. Here you can really see the bounce effects and how the lighting plays in the craters. Apologies. I mean, this is just so typically me that it's almost like I have to do it this way now, but yeah. I'm sure a smart person could have set up a field of some sort that could be manipulated in terms of spread and chaos and center and all kinds of things, but yeah, maybe for another time. So now I'm moving the camera around, and I know I want sort of a layout where the ship is zooming past some asteroids at an angle, and I'm toying with the idea of having both the sun hit the ship in a way that's interesting, where it's lit but not too lit, but at the same time maybe even having its shadow hit an asteroid as it's passing. So you can see I'm scaling up this asteroid here to get that sense. I really like these craters on the asteroid in the foreground. I think they look great. And then of course the question of motion blur. So just doing a really rough linear animation here on the camera and the ship, and then trying to find a composition in that space that looks good. Oops, don't animate the stones, my friend. Playing with the motion blur, playing with the shutter curve. Got some advice the other day to play with the motion blur curve so it's not linear, to make it look a little bit more soft. And here, I mean, already here I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. I believe that we have something that's going to be cool. I really like how the rocks, how the asteroids render, how they catch the light, and how they are, delete those, how they catch the light and how they have that warmth and the brutal sense of vacuum at the same time. I think that's really interesting. So what I'm trying to do here is add a bit of upwards momentum to the ship, almost as if it would be swerving, so that the motion blur would get a slight sideways sensation as well. So I'm just shutting off the render view there because it's a little confusing, just to check if I have a good motion. When I have something I believe in. Experiment a bit with a bit more distance so that the motion blur would be a little bit more extreme. Yeah, and turning on and off that auto keyer there all the time, which is driving me crazy. Even more widescreen. Again, composition is everything. You can see how the ship and the asteroid up in the corner there is forming like it's almost like a little triangle. And now it's just about calming the area around the ship a little bit so that there isn't as much clutter to confuse the eye. Or stupid, if you don't want clutter, maybe don't do an asteroid sequence. But yeah, here we are. And you can see the asteroids up top as well, how they have that. They just look really, really nice in terms of how they render. I think they're really kind to my scene. So rotate the field a little bit. So that maybe that's a upside, I don't know. But the fact that I can actually control the rear and the front of the field as I want to, because it's just copied out elements. Maybe there's some upside to my dumb solution after all. I'm not sure. So here the thing is just double checking where the sun should come from. I felt like the ship was a little dark, want a little bit more light on it. But that makes me lose the shadow on the rock there. Okay, so I gotta move that closer then, eh? And now you can see that triangular composition I'm talking about, where the angle of the ship points down to the middle of the frame, up right hand corner to the big asteroid in front. And here I'm experimenting with a sense of foreground, background, midground. Maybe that would also be difficult if I had made a field of some sort. I don't like navigating my scene in with numbers and sliders. I much prefer to move things around visually. It's easier for my brain. Maybe it's just cope that I'm trying to pretend that there's upsides to it. You can see I'm experimenting with a big asteroid here to make sure that the shadow of that asteroid covers the field in the background and gives visual calm for the eye to allow the ship to read. And you get that triangular composition. I'm not conscious about this as I'm doing it. It just sort of happens, and I'm explaining it to you guys because I can sort of, see it from afar now, but I'm not particularly conscious about it. So I think often the lessons learned and the tricks of the trade, they are formulated after the fact, at least in my case. Test renders. See the shadow from the ship, right? How it leads the eye to the ship, as well as it positions the ship in 3D space. Asteroid in the background provides shadow for the ship itself, and then the asteroid in the foreground with the crater gives a nice sense of speed. So I feel like it's beginning to look, it's beginning to work. I want a little bit more speed on that, so moving the asteroid a little bit closer. But I think the core foundations of the logic of how it should work are present. So here I'm experimenting a little bit with adding more detail to the asteroid by simply copying it into itself. I figured the surfaces would probably be kind to that kind of hacky job. quick experiment by copying one stone asteroid and then see if I can use it as a shadow caster to create some visual calm in the midfield there. Maybe there would have been a point of using a big spotlight instead of a sun. But then it wouldn't have been truly parallel, of course. So I like this. Let's bring it to Photoshop. So the first thing I do is copy the layer, and then I go into the raw mode, because that's where Photoshop has sort of a tool treatment that feels a little bit like Lightroom or maybe even Apple's photo manipulators. It's really nice. And to be perfectly honest, I simply yank around the sliders to test if it appeals to me, what happens. And then of course I've learned a few tricks over the years, but the hardest ones to get the best out of is really the texture clarity and dehaze, as you see over here. A little bit of grain and a bunch of sharpening. Bring in some 35mm film grain. I unsharp mask that to get a little bit more visible. Choose the overlay. Play with contrast just to get a feeling I like. And then fill. Never use opacity. Opacity is poo-poo. Use fill to change transparency. That'll help a lot of things. Here I get a lens flare that I got. I have no idea where it's from. Apologies. But I like the look of it. Erase a little bit the surroundings there in screen mode. Copy it over. Erase the center there. Nice and easy. Merge the two layers. Keep them mid-screen. Stretch the edges out so that the flare gets, the anamorphic gets longer. It's a little bit more Abramsy or Bay maybe. Just test the midtones and the gamma of it just to see what the brightness looks like. I feel like there's some asteroids out on the edges that steal attention from the frame. I scale it up, do some brightness tests, checks on a little bit of that bounce on the asteroids. Do the same, copy it again and just check. See when I raise the darkness levels there, that's something that comes in, a bit of that bounce. I feel like maybe what I want to do here is do some extra crushed, shadow areas with a lot of texture. I'm looking at that big asteroid in the foreground and I'm texturing that up quite a bit, masking it, and then I'm erasing everything else. So drawing back in some of that noise from that sharpening there. And then do it again, and then this time adjusting some colors from in the warm and the oranges. But again, you can see how experimental I am. I'm just yanking them around to see. Sometimes you get used to a certain look. Let's say if a shot looks a little green or yellow, you get used to it to the point where you can't see it anymore. So you have to sort of yank yourself out of that reality. So you can see here I'm adding a little bit of cool to the shadows. A little bit of cyany blue to the shadows generally. That'll be a nice counterpart to the warmth of the asteroids. I'm checking first and last. So you can see how the shadows are bluer. I mean, it's totally messed up, this picture here, because of the effects and render and lens sim I use. It looks really weird when you zoom in. So now I'm playing with a sharpen that doesn't have all the lens artifacts. I draw that in with a mask. I would say that this shot is a good look dev, but it's a little noisy and intense for a render. But yeah. So in this video, you saw how my process looks like for creating a look dev for what will eventually turn into an animated sequence. And it's very experimental, very loosey-goosey. I mean, you know, I trust my gut and I trust my instincts. And you'll notice that there isn't any sketching happening here. I think Blender is so quick to work in that working spatially. It's amazing that you can get spatial ideas and test them out instantly and move the camera around, positioning objects in relation to each other. I think there's an argument for sketching out composition, like where do you want your object, where do you want your subject and your background and things like that. But to be honest, you know, it sort of happens, and I'm okay with that process. And again, when we mention professional environments, you know, if you were to get a task like this, you would have different needs presented to you. You would have what is the scene supposed to do, dynamism, tempo, things like that, which would then naturally set up, you know, boundaries and let's say borders for your creativity. But in this case, I was just loosely inspired by the classic Star Wars scene, and so yeah. As far as tricks go, you know, remain playful, I would say. As you see me test the Photoshop stuff, it's all about keep testing. Usually I would add cool to the shadows. Usually I would test the brightness, how much gamma, how much black, what's the black level. And then usually I would add more crispy unsharp mask or focus, or like, you know, the crispy clarity and all these different filters in the shadows then. Or even in the surrounds and in the areas with low contrast, versus if you have a grass meadow or a sky or you know, a desert floor or something like that, you can really crunch that up, a lot of crispy detail, and then let the subject remain calm. You can really gather a lot of detail out there. So that's what I did in this scene as well. That'll come in handy when I test against you know, motion and motion blur and stuff again. But that's really the quick look dev of this Asteroid scene. It's so much fun to come back into Asteroid land again. And I suspect we will see more of this scene in the future. If you want to see some more Photoshop stuff, I have that in one of the places. And I don't know. I'll choose another video for whatever. Do the YouTube thing. I don't know, man. But anyway, see you.